Pete, let's get right into Heisman talk. Okay. So, biggest award in sports, fair to say, Heisman Trophy. We're,
Yeah,
so you can bet on it. And I was thinking, all right, let's do a little research to figure out what long shots may emerge, what trends there are. So we looked at the last 10 years and the players who finished in the top 5 in the voting. And what was interesting to me, and I'm curious if you thought the same thing, was that I actually thought it was going to be a really, really tight list of criteria of what led to a Heisman winner. And I found that there were more routes to being in contention or actually winning the trophy than expected. You agree with that?
yeah. Part of it is that anytime you look at a group of top contenders as opposed to the ultimate winner, you start to see different factors emerge. And we looked at the top 5 Heisman finishers for the past 10 years. When you do that, it's not just quarterbacks. It's not just national champions. There's other stuff floating around there too. I mean, beginning with it's not just quarterbacks. I mean, we've seen defensive linemen win recently. We've seen how many wide receivers? 1 in the past 10 years. But it's not just all national champion predictable quarterbacks. There's some interesting other factors. Yes, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So here are a couple lessons learned, and then we can close this out with some long shot picks that you can bet on. But so first of all, if you're just looking at the top 5 each year, the one thing is that does stand out is you really do need to be from a good team. Virtually everyone, especially in the last 5 years or so, who made it to who finished in the top 5 in the Heisman voting was from a top 10, if not top 15 team. Now, what's interesting there is that doesn't mean that they started the season with those expectations. In the past 2 years alone, 4 of the 10 guys who were top 5 finishers in the Heisman were on teams that were unranked in the preseason. And half of them, 5 of 10, finished finished the previous year unranked. So that ties in really nicely to a show we'll do later this summer on finding long shot teams. But if you can successfully identify a team that's going to come out of nowhere, I think that's a fun way to kind of pick a Heisman candidate too. Who's the driving force behind that, right?
Right. Now, let's throw in a couple of wrinkles. It helps to be from a power conference team, but it's not absolutely necessary, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially if a team is like what you're talking about, a team that comes out of nowhere, does really well, gets national visibility, gets promotion for its players, is obviously sparked by one great player like TCU, right? But also in the past, there have been other examples of that. Keenan Reynolds finished 5th one year coming out of Navy. I mean, that's an exception, but it doesn't have to be a huge program. It has to be a good team. The other thing that I found interesting was it doesn't necessarily have to be a team that has done better than the previous year or, improved from 9 to 2 in the rankings. It just has to be a team having a really great season. I think more than anything, that's related to media exposure. I think the number of times people see a great player leading a really good visible team, a lot of other stuff fades into the background. I really think it's that simple.
Well, right. You mentioned TCU last year, right? And Max Duggan finished 2nd in the Heisman voting. That's after finishing the previous season unranked, starting last year unranked, and then moving all the way up to number 3 at the time of the Heisman. So it's not like Max Duggan came in off a massive statistical season. He'd, thrown for a little over 2,000 yards and 16 touchdowns the year before. So the point is you can make up a lot of ground as long as your team is good. The other aspect to that is you don't have to have a track record with that team, especially now in the transfer portal. I would have thought coming in that, it's someone who already has a built-in narrative that this is their year. This is their time. Well, we've seen last year winner Caleb Williams was a transfer. We've had other transfers do very well. We've had going back all the way to Jameis Winston as a freshman winning it. And you see, by contrast, the guys who were we're defending Heisman winners. It's a really high bar to win it again. And they have not been in the mix, whether that was a Jameis Winston or a Johnny Manziel or a Deshaun Watson. Like, when you want to anoint those guys as a foregone conclusion, and so you're looking sort of at Caleb Williams again, who's looking to repeat. It's not so easy.
Look, part of that is because it's almost impossible to be the very best player in the country, head and shoulders above anyone else 2 years in a row. Part of it's it's just regression to the mean. Part of it is that these guys sometimes go to the NFL, but it's very true. There is no such thing as a foregone conclusion. Even if you're a returning Heisman winner, that's not that big a plus by itself in winning for a second year in a row.
Now, when you narrow it down to just the last 10 winners, it does condense a little bit. 8 of the 10 have been quarterbacks. The only 2 were Derrick Henry in 2015, running back at Alabama, and then another Alabama player, Devontae Smith, in 2020 as a wide receiver. Otherwise, it's been a lot of quarterbacks, but it's really varied in terms of, there's only 3 seniors in the mix. There's 3 juniors. There's 3 sophomores and a freshman. So you can be any class. I will say that all the winners started the preseason rank. 7 of the 10 were top 10. There was an 11, a 14, and a 19 in the mix, and all were on good teams, top 10 teams. The only guy outside of the top 10 at the time of the voting was Lamar Jackson. Louisville was ranked 15th in 2016. So that's instructive. So if you're looking to pick a winner, you got to figure out what team's going to be really good and generally who the quarterback of that is. But I don't think you're restricted on guys who were really good the year before. And with that in mind, can I give my first pick, Peter?
Sure.
All right.
I'll let you go first.
We mentioned that transfers are not disqualifying. We mentioned narratives matter, teams improving. So I'm looking at Sam Hartman at plus 1,600, coming from Wake Forest. Notre Dame as the new quarterback. They're a preseason top 15 team in the coaches poll. You can see them rising. If Notre Dame has a magical season, which is within the range of outcomes, it's going to be Hartman driving it, and a lot of talk about that move. So I think there's real value in him at plus 1,600.
All right, I can see that. I got nothing to argue with about that. Plus 1,600.
Nothing?
Plus 1,600 is interesting. It seems like there are a few guys who are in that range, which are not close to being favorites, but other than Caleb Williams, I guess there is no favorite, right? I mean,
we're making a non-Caleb Williams pick. He's plus 550.
And there's not a gaggle of guys around plus 400 or 500 or 600. There's guys in that range. So, I mean, if you're going to go safe, I guess that's a good pick.
All right. Well, I'll save my next one, but with your first pick in the Heisman long shot draft, who are you taking?
Talking about narratives and transfers, how about a 6th-year senior? I'm talking about Joe Milton, Tennessee. I mean, look, he spent 3 years at Michigan. This is going to be his 3rd year at Tennessee. Jordan, sometimes, I mean, we haven't even talked about the nitty-gritty of analytics about all this, but sometimes numbers are so huge, they essentially can't be lying, okay? This is the guy taking over for Hendon Hooker. So the offense and the scheme and the coaching are there for him to open it up if he can, and boy, can he. Jordan, last year, 14.3 average adjusted yards per attempt. 10 touchdowns, no interceptions on only 82 passes. In limited time, Joe Milton had a passer rating of 204. So, look, this team is going to stay really good. It's going to score a ton of points, and you're going to see someone step in, and your eyes are going to pop out when you watch this guy play for the first couple of times. And that is that's deep analytics, Jordan. He will be literally eye popping.
Literally.
But when you're talking about winning awards, that's kind of what you need. Like, he's going to start out with a good place, and then he's going to surprise people by being even better. And so he's plus 2,500. I mean, I think that's tremendous value.
All right. Well, let's speaking of eye popping, that nice segue to my second pick. And we talked about 8 of the last 10 winners being quarterbacks. So the 2 who weren't were both on Alabama teams that were ranked 1st or 2nd, put up jaw-dropping numbers. So you got to find someone who's going to be on a potentially great team, who's going to, put up insane numbers and have the narrative just being better. So here's a fun stat for you. Okay. In the year before Devontae Smith won the Heisman, he had 1,256 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. Last year, a receiver on a really good team had 1,263 receiving yards and 14 touchdowns. And his name is Marvin Harrison Jr. He's also projected to be the number 1 pick potentially in some mock drafts. Ohio State's a top 5 preseason team. So he's the type of guy who could go 1,800 yards and 25 touchdowns and go off, go nuts. The talk of him being a generational talent. I could totally see this narrative if Ohio State has a great season that Harrison's just the best player in the country and he wins at plus 2,000. I think those are good odds.
He's definitely the kind of guy that people will say, if you're going to give it to a wide receiver, X should win it, right? I mean, he's the guy who fits that mold. We don't need to have a quarterback this year because this guy's so much better than everyone. Sure.
Right. Is he just the most dominant player? All right, Peter,
dominant.
You got one last pick before we move on?
All right, I'm going to go long, and I mean long, like Joe Milton, a guy who can throw the ball 70 or 80 yards in the air. I'm going to go with a long shot at DJ Uiagalelei, the quarterback at Oregon State. Now look, will anybody from Oregon State win a Heisman? Maybe not so much according to our analysis here, although more teams from outside the usual suspects than we expected produced Heisman contenders. This is a team that's gone from 2 wins 5 years ago to 10 wins last year. 2 of its 3 losses were by a combined 3 points, okay? They get Utah and Washington at home this year. I don't think they play USC, but I have to see. I don't know how that's possible. But I think Oregon is a sneaky, not so sneaky. I think it's an excellent choice to win the Pac-12. While they're surprising people, this guy's going to step into an offense that is engineered to score tons of points. He's great on play action, which sets up these huge throws, which he's also great at. I'll stop there. I'm not going to give you tons of stats, except this. He's plus 9,000. That's pretty cool value for a guy you're going to see surprising you all across West Coast games in October and November.
I mean, if you want to go with an Oregon State quarterback, go for it. But I do reserve the right to, when we do our long shot team show in a couple weeks, if there's when that research is done and there's a team I really love, I reserve the right to add a Heisman candidate at that time. But for
that's
now,
but not the one that's not from Oregon State.
No, because Oregon State's not going to do anything. Peter, come on.
Oh, come on! They're going to win 11 games. I don't know. Are we still recording? Should I have said that?
On that note, let's move off the college game and into the pros.